Thanks, Andy. I think it's a really good segue into what I wanted to talk about. So just a brief intro to myself and to Lloyds as well. So as Pete mentioned earlier, I'm a lifer, so I've been in the bank for 27 years, got the scars to prove. But during that time, it's been very, very insightful for a large retail bank such as Lloyds to see the journey of banking, the journey of our organisation itself. And just to give you sort of reel off some numbers around Lloyds, my opportunity to get on the soapbox a little bit. So hopefully everybody's heard Lloyds. Perfect. How many Lloyds customers in the room? I was hoping for about 50%, so I'll need it. But we're the largest retail bank. We've got over 14 million customers. 10 million of those are now online as well. So we're a big bank, a big organisation. So that's really good, really successful. You may have seen our results come out for last year. They've been pretty positive as well. But behind that, we get a bit of complexity as well. So we're really big. We're sometimes quite slow in doing things. And because we've had so many mergers and acquisitions and divestments, behind the scenes, we're quite complex. So we think about our main goals, information security professionals, is about protecting customer data and protecting our assets. To do it behind the scenes is actually quite difficult. We've got governance, we've got red tape. In terms of colleagues, we've got over 130,000 colleagues that work for Lloyds. Of those, differs from time to time, but it's about 40,000 of those colleagues are contingent workers, so contractors, third parties, offshore colleagues, which is great because we need to embrace that way of working. But when we think about training and making that workforce aware of our profession, it becomes quite difficult. So a couple of years ago, we joined the IISP as corporate members. The drivers behind our sort of reaching out to the IISP was quite simple, really. We wanted to grow capability of our people in the profession. And when I say our people, I work within the policy sort of leadership area of our team. We've got a small team of about 16 people, but we own the policy for information security across Lloyds. And our role is to lead and guide the organisation through those different aspects of policy. But we've got a much wider community of professionals out in the business as well. So we've got our foot soldiers, we've got our extended security community as well that we need to grow capability in this guise as well. So our main focus, our main scope is around a small group of about 100 people, so we can upskill our profession to look after our assets, and a third of you in here as well look after your information there as well. And what Andy was saying earlier, and what Jonathan from the HMRC was talking about earlier as well, resonated with me, is actually being seen as professionals. Quite often we have to influence and convince our business colleagues, our counterpart execs, our different directors, and often it's difficult. You haven't really got a badge to say I know what I'm talking about. So what we're trying to do with our colleagues is actually professionalise them and actually give them some form of identity from a capability perspective. And Andy touched on it as well, attracting and retaining talent as well. So I'm a great believer of churn is good as well. So within our team, just to give you examples, when we joined the membership in 2014, I think we had 3 FTE trying to lead policy across Lloyds. We're now a team of 16, so we've had a good deal of growth. I'm looking at my two lady colleagues over in the left-hand side, Fran and Anita. So with me, they've joined that team over the last couple of years, and they've been embracing membership to the IISP as well. So we're trying to attract business colleagues as well as technical colleagues and get that mix, and that slide bar that Andy showed earlier is really important to have the business view as well, because on a day-to-day basis, our biggest challenge is educating the business, influencing and trying to put information security as an agenda sort of fairly high up. Before I move on, just want a bit of audience participation. No role plays, nothing like that. But could I just have a show of hands, thinking, quite honestly, how many in the room are convinced they've got a current qualitative development plan that they look at on a regular basis that they feel is actually leading them through their career path? Show of hands, how many people think they've got a really good personal development plan? it all goes wrong if you all put your hands up, because that goes out the window. So I think that resonates for me as well. I do this quite regularly because, as you all know, what often happens, and I don't know why this happens, but our own personal growth and personal development always goes to the bottom of the pile. Business, priorities, all these sort of things, reactive type activities, always land on top of our own personal development. We need to sort of shift that round and be more selfish for ourselves. But I think if we're more selfish for ourselves, that will help our own personal growth, but indeed the business. So we've worked with Andy and with Amanda and a lot of the other corporate members over the last couple of years, and it's been a really fantastic journey to get insight into different areas of our industry. I think Andy once said to me, because Andy used to work for BP, and he said when you go off to the oil rigs, when you did sort of risk assessments, and one of the biggest concerns from a BP oil rig perspective is if Sky TV doesn't work. Because the guys on the rigs, suddenly the motivation and the morale goes down. So, but it just shows that different sectors of the business have got different challenges there as well. So it's been really insightful just to share experiences with other colleagues across this space. And what we've tried to do, I've just listed here, we've tried to leverage our membership, which we think is absolutely fantastic value for money in trying to build on our drivers that I mentioned earlier and taking our capability forward. So I've led this over the last couple of years in a very kind of simplistic, non-project way to try to move us on a very gradual basis rather than this big bang approach, setting ourselves some very clear goals around adapting the framework as Andy described earlier. So we've taken it off the shelf from the IISP, we've tweaked it, adapted it, made it green, like a bit of green. But we've actually developed it so it actually fits in with what colleagues understand today for their other capability developments in other areas. And the biggest focus that we had, which often is forgotten about when we talk about personal development plans, everybody that I've spoken to or had experience of automatically jump to, I've got to go on a course, I've got to spend some money, I've got to go on an exam, I've got to do this, I've got to do that. And when we actually sat down with people saying, why? What skill gap is it trying to address? So this first step, actually assessing what are your skill gaps first through self-assessment, is really, really important, because often I've found it's a part that's skipped. We don't try to go to the end goal straight away, get the exam, put the certificate in your drawer, and you carry on. So what we've tried to do with our framework is actually really focus on colleagues and put the onus on them to actually sit down and do their own self-assessments. And the way that we've adapted the skills framework now, we've asked colleagues to do it. It takes them less than an hour. So we say it takes an hour of your time, and at the end of that hour, you'll usually have a pretty picture around where your skill target should be, depending on your role, excuse me, and where your skill gaps are. And that's really, really powerful, because they can then start to use that as the nucleus of their personal development. And then they need to start to bring in their line manager and actually put their line manager on the spot to say, Mr. Line Manager, I need some help here. These are my skill gaps. What budget have I got to do it? What can I do? What opportunities are you going to give me? Are you going to cut me some time? And this goes back to that question I asked you earlier about high quality development plans. So are you using it to actually track your progress? And when I see high quality development plans, it just needs to be on a single way form. It doesn't have to be complex. It doesn't have to be very detailed. It has to be very, very structured to address your skill gap and a very clear path of where you're getting to. And from us as a team within the policy area, we've got responsibility for the group. So we've got responsibility to make sure the business themselves are able to do this. So if we see any thematic type gaps, we can try to guide them and assess them and guide them through that as well. And on the right-hand side, these are the artefacts that we've kind of used to help us get there. So the framework itself, we've also tried to use our own internal resource. So I don't know how many large organisations are sat in the room here, but quite often a large organisation will have their own training partner, a learning partner, some sort of resource. Well, we've got Skillsoft. Skillsoft are our learning partner. And we went to Skillsoft and said, how much information security training is off the shelf available to us? And they said, here's 3,000 items that you can refer to. We go, that's why it's not used. So it's really trying to see the wood for the trees in terms of our own internal resources, which are free, off the shelf, available to our colleagues, reading material, videos, mentoring, all of these sort of different aspects of training were there, ready and willing to be used, but weren't because it's just too complex, spread across. So what we're able to do, we gave them our framework, gave them the 35 skill areas and said, can you map that to those 3,000 items and give us a very clear library of where we would go for each skill? And they've done that. So when colleagues now do their self-assessment, they see their gaps. If the gap is in a particular skill, they can go to Skillsoft and say, here are 6 items that will help you address that skill gap. And these are the ways you can do it. Be self-study, watch a video, put you in touch with a mentor. So it really started to help ourselves, for want of a better word, and avoid that trap of going, I've got to go and spend £3,000 on a course. And I spoke earlier about business engagement, so we're trying to give them something to, a self-help type tool. We're trying to give them something that can actually help them with their own personal growth and personal development. And what's really, really important through this journey of governance that we've got within Lloyds is how we use our training budgets, for example. So within our Directorate of Group Security Fraud, we've got about 50 or 60 people across different areas. And the budget we had for 2015 was £23,000. So might sound a lot, but spread across that number of people, it's just insufficient. So with a bit of science behind it and a bit of evidence, we can go to our powers that be to say, we need this training because this will address this specific skill gap. We can utilise our skill budgets much more effectively. And our budgets for this year for training have been tripled. So, and we've been able to utilise those very effectively. I'm going to pick on Fran and Anita again. So when these guys joined our team, they were provisioned with a training budget, have now gone on and started to get some really good accreditations. So just a quick summary of what we've done so far. A lot of this I've already covered. The areas that I just want to call out as well. Is anybody familiar with the 70-20-10 learning model? No? Have a Google. Oh, thank you very much. Have a Google it, because it's a really good way of breaking down how you set up the development plan, how you want to address these skill gaps. And it's a percentage. So if you identify a skill gap, there are 3 ways you can do to address it. 70% of the time you can do it on the job with a bit of focus to make sure, okay, I know the skill gap, so I might need to sway my work in a certain direction to pick up that learning. 20% is learning from the experts. So if you've got experts in your organisation, go and talk to them, shadow them, sit down with them, get involved with them. And then the 10% is the formal training. So this is the going on a course and getting your exam, and getting your badge, and getting your certificate. And it's a good way of actually, again, structuring this problem of I've got to go on a course to address that skill gap. And we've started to embrace that and actually use that to structure your development plan. And I'd really encourage you just to go away, look at that learning model and see whether it can help you. And in terms of learning points, what I want to do to try to sort of promote this use of the skills framework is it really starts with the business, it starts with the people, it's hearts and minds type thing, and it's getting positive buy-in from the community. So we're trying to give them some help. They're really, really busy, they often struggle. We're actually trying to say, spend a bit of time, these are the training resources and materials that you can use to really develop yourselves. We spoke about promoting our in-house free training resources. So again, that's a real key benefit, and we're going to continue through that maturity of that process. Effective use of training budgets, because the more you use it, the more you get in future. It goes without saying in terms of explaining the benefits to colleagues. So already through this journey, we can see the benefits. And if I'm speaking honestly and frankly, we're not there yet, because a lot of colleagues still don't use the tool. So So we're having to keep promoting it, that constant, if you do it, this is the end goal for you. So we're still on that journey, and we're trying to do that through this year as well. And we're starting, because we've landed this with the business about a year, 18 months ago, we're now starting to be a bit harder on them. So we've actually embedded it within policy. So we're the policy owners, so we're in a good privileged position to think, okay, we're in charge of the rule book. So within the rules, we've actually slid a key control in there to say to the business folk, because you're in charge of retail, commercial, digital, whatever business part you're responsible for, you have a responsibility for information security. And part of that responsibility is to understand, have you got the right people, the right capability to manage it? So the key control says, you need a mechanism to assess your colleagues that have an information security role to perform, and a good way to do it is to use a framework such as ours, modelled on the IISP. So we can actually start to turn the screw on them a little bit in a quite subtle but gentle way to say, it's a nice to have, but you need to actually do it to maintain policy. And what we're doing through this year is looking at ways to actually make the tool itself easier to use. We've come up with a version 2 that's about to launch this month to make it a lot more intuitive. We're looking at ways to actually make it a little bit more user-friendly for them. And what we'll start to do is gather in all of those results as a policy-owning area to look at those thematic type issues, because I think this is where the information becomes quite rich when we start to layer it on if there's a particular thematic type skill gap. And we can then start to play on the strengths or address the gaps. And again, we'll start to look at this monitoring of colleagues and how they're addressing against our policy requirements. And the other aspect we want to do is, we haven't really touched on it as such yet this morning, but through membership of the IISP, we can get this independent validation of our knowledge and skills. So those colleagues that have got an SME role that we're performing, we want to start pumping them through that process, put them in front of some really skilled colleagues, part of IISP, so we can get our rubber stamp. And if we can do that ahead of getting the chartered status, then it starts to give us that professional badge, as I mentioned earlier, that we want to give to our business and to our colleagues. And this is what we're striving for. This is what we want to do. And we're talking about demographics, so it doesn't have to be Superman, it could be Supergirl as well, or Wonder Woman, whatever we want to do. But we want to be seen when we rock up, think, okay, oh, John's here now, he knows what he's talking about, let's listen to what he has to say. And we want to have that gravitas with our colleagues and with our business. So I shall leave us with the Superman thought, and perhaps open it up for questions from the